This is BRICS Global Television Network's weekly news roundup. We begin with the headlines. South Africa on high alert as the Mpox virus in Africa is declared a public health emergency. Brazil reports this year's been the worst for Amazon fires in nearly 2 decades. China reports a slowdown in industrial production growth and a rise in unemployment. A new chapter in China's panda diplomacy with the USA. Hello, I'm Juliet Newell. We begin in South Africa, where the health departments responded to the Africa Centres for Disease Control and Prevention Agency's declaration that Mpox be treated as a public health emergency on the continent. South Africa's health departments urged vigilance, having already identified a handful of cases in recent months, the latest of which was reported on the 2nd of August, a 20-year-old Gauteng man who'd recently travelled to Peru. However, it's unclear whether he contracted the virus abroad or on home soil. Mpox, formerly known as Monkeypox, is a viral disease that can present with a variety of symptoms. The symptoms often resemble those of smallpox, but are generally less severe. Here's a breakdown of the common symptoms associated with Mpox. Fever, headache, muscle aches, fatigue, swollen lymph nodes, rash, chills and sweating, sore throat and cough. The symptoms usually appear 7 to 14 days after exposure to the virus. Mpox is treatable, but could lead to death in patients who are immunocompromised or have other comorbidities. Our BGTN South Africa correspondent Ingam Zileni has more.
Between July and August, there were 124 new cases across 7 African countries, including South Africa. In South Africa, of the 22 reported cases, 19 people have recovered and 3 have died. A new, more concerning strain of Mpox, known as Clade IB, has emerged in the DRC since September. This strain is spread person to person and causes extensive skin rashes, unlike other strains that typically cause lesions on the mouth, face and genitals. Earlier this week, World Health Organization Chief Tedros Ghebreyesus called an emergency meeting of international representatives to address the outbreak. In East Africa, Burundi, Kenya, Rwanda and Uganda have reported their first Mpox cases, all linked to the ongoing outbreak in East and Central Africa and identified as Clade IB. Meanwhile, Côte d'Ivoire is experiencing an outbreak linked to Clade 2, and South Africa has reported 2 new additional cases.
The detection and rapid spread of a new clade of Mpox in eastern DRC, its detection in neighboring countries that had not previously reported Mpox, and the potential for further spread within Africa and beyond is very worrying. In addition to other outbreaks of other clades of Mpox in other parts of Africa, it's clear that a coordinated international response is essential to stop these outbreaks and save lives.
The Africa CDC has documented 14,479 confirmed and suspected cases in the DRC, with 455 deaths as of August 3, reflecting a mortality rate of around 3%. However, researchers warn that the mortality rate among children could be as high as 10%. Authorities in East African countries have confirmed Mpox cases, with Burundi reporting 127 cases, though the specific strain has not been detailed.
Mpox has now crossed borders, affecting thousands across our continent. Families have been torn apart, and the pain and suffering have touched every corner of our continent.
Meanwhile, in South Africa, health officials are concerned about the impact the spread of the disease will have on individuals with HIV and AIDS, saying they are very vulnerable if they are not on antiretrovirals. The Department of Health spokesperson Foster Mohale said the country managed to quell the spread by using various treatments. South Africa does not have a vaccine yet, but is identifying a few vaccine products outside the country. Ingam Zileni, BGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
In India, thousands of people have taken to the streets of Kolkata this week to condemn the rape and murder of a local doctor and to demand justice and an end to violence against women in India. The brutalized body of the 31-year-old was found last week at a state-run hospital, triggering nationwide protests. In Kolkata, crowds marched under the banner "Reclaim the Night" and held a midnight candlelight rally coinciding with India's Independence Day celebrations. Protesters called for comprehensive action against violence, holding signs that read, "We want justice" and "Hang the rapist, save the women." Prime Minister Narendra Modi, speaking at Independence Day celebrations in New Delhi on Thursday, expressed pain over violence against women and emphasized the need for swift and severe punishment for such crimes. Doctors across India have halted elective services to demand better workplace security. The murdered doctor's case has been transferred to the Central Bureau of Investigation following allegations of police mishandling. Scientists have linked climate change to the catastrophic landslides in India that killed at least 200 people last month. Heavy monsoon rains battered Kerala's Wayanad district on July the 30th, causing landslides that buried homes under tons of rock and soil. According to World Weather Attribution, the WWA, that's a network specializing in assessing climate change's impact on extreme events, human-induced climate change made the rainfall about 10% heavier. The analysis revealed that over 140 millimeters of rain fell in a single day, marking one of the area's heaviest one-day downpours on record. Increased temperatures from fossil fuel emissions allow the atmosphere to hold more moisture, leading to heavier rainfall. Additionally, a 62% reduction in forest cover in Wayanad since 1950 has decreased slope stability, exacerbating landslide risks. Scientists warn that such intense rainfall and resulting landslides will worsen without a shift to renewable energy. In China, elderly residents are facing heightened health risks due to oppressive heat and poor ventilation, with 2024 expected to be the hottest year on record. Many live in subdivided apartments, a common living arrangement due to the price of living in one of the world's most expensive real estate markets, but an uncomfortable one. In Hong Kong, the housing crisis has led to a proliferation of these cramped units where the elderly are increasingly vulnerable. And as new construction is limited, public housing apartments are few and far between. The Red Cross is working with over 650 households in similar conditions, aiming to improve living conditions and mitigate heat-related health risks. Studies show that extreme heat raises mortality risk, highlighting the urgent need for better housing solutions. Google's confirmed that Iranian-backed hackers known as APT-42 have targeted the campaigns of US presidential rivals Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Linked to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, APT-42 is aimed at high-profile individuals and organizations in the United States and Israel, including political campaigns and government officials. Kamala Harris's campaign acknowledged that it was a target of foreign hackers, following similar claims from Trump's campaign. Both campaigns have reported being informed of those attacks by the FBI and have reinforced their cybersecurity measures. Google's report indicates APT-42's continued efforts to compromise personal accounts related to President Joe Biden, Vice President Harris, and Trump. The hackers use sophisticated phishing tactics, posing as credible contacts to trick victims into revealing login information. Google's blocked numerous attempts by APT-42, emphasizing the need for vigilance among high-risk individuals. To Brazil now, reporting that the Amazon has experienced over 37,000 forest fires this year alone, the highest number in nearly 2 decades. That's according to satellite data released this week. This represents a staggering 111% increase compared to the same period in 2023, as reported by Brazil's National Institute for Space Research, the INPE. Since 1998, only 2003, 2004 and 2005 saw more fires in this time frame. From January the 1st to August the 13th, Close to 38,000 fires were recorded, exacerbated by a historic drought last year. The World Weather Attribution noted that the intense conditions fueling these fires were 40% more severe due to climate change. This surge in fires poses a challenge for President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva's administration, which is working to combat illegal deforestation and reduce global warming. Well, despite Lula's pledge to halt deforestation by 2030, the problems persisted, and it's worsened by policies of his predecessor, Jair Bolsonaro. Coming up, BRICS Plus Business News.
For many, dance in Africa is a rich cultural expression, serving various purposes like entertainment and religious rituals. However, over thousands of years, dance in Africa has been used as a secret way to communicate, sometimes during birth and death, frequently to each other, and at times directly to the gods.
In China, official data released this week there shows a slowdown in industrial production growth and a rise in unemployment, reflecting a tepid economic recovery despite recent government efforts. Industrial production grew 5.1% in July, down from 5.3% in June and below the 5.2% forecast. The unemployment rate increased to 5.2% in July, up from 5% in June, though this figure only includes urban areas. The youth unemployment rate was 13.2% in June and had peaked at 21.3% last year before the suspension of data publication. Despite the challenges, retail sales grew 2.7% year-on-year, improving from June's 2% increase and surpassing forecasts. Some sectors like services and domestic tourism show recovery, but the real estate sector remains under pressure with falling prices and high developer bankruptcies. Additionally, demand for bank loans contracted and international trade barriers are increasing. Staying in China, where Tencent reported an 82% increase in net profit for the second quarter, its largest rise since late 2020, driven by a revival in its gaming business. The company's net profit reached $6.7 billion from April to June, up from $3.7 billion a year earlier, with sales rising 8% to $22.5 billion. Tencent's domestic and international gaming revenues grew, fueled by heightened user engagement and successful game launches. Despite this surge, Tencent faced its lowest annual profit since 2019 earlier this year due to a revenue slump in late 2023. The company's growth had slowed following stringent regulatory measures by Beijing and restrictions on online gaming for minors, which impacted profitability. Tencent is now focusing on artificial intelligence to drive future growth, unveiling the Hunyuan AI chatbot to compete with global technologies like ChatGPT. The Russian government reintroduced a 6-month ban on petrol exports effective from the 1st of September to the end of the year. That's to stabilize domestic fuel prices after recent increases. The ban aims to ensure price stability amid seasonal demand and refinery maintenance. Russia had previously imposed a similar ban in March, briefly lifting it between May and July due to a saturated market. The new restriction excludes exports to countries within the Eurasian Economic Union, including Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan and Armenia. Despite its vast energy reserves, Russia imposed export bans on diesel and petrol last year to protect domestic purchasing power amid a weakening ruble and economic sanctions. With a 2023 petrol production of 43.9 million tonnes, the ban also serves to support Moscow's economy amid ongoing military operations in Ukraine and recent Ukrainian drone attacks on fuel depots. Ethiopian Airlines has announced a $6 billion project to build Africa's largest airport, set to be completed in 5 years' time. The new hub, designed by Dubai-based consulting firm DAR, will be located in Bishoftu, that's 40 kilometers southeast of Addis Ababa. It'll cover 35 square kilometers and feature 4 runways, initially accommodating 60 million passengers annually, with plans to expand to 100 million passengers per year in the second phase. Ethiopian Airlines CEO Mesfin Tasu highlighted that the new airport will surpass Bole International Airport, which currently handles up to 25 million passengers yearly. DAR will develop the detailed design and assist in contractor selection for the project. Ethiopian Airlines, the largest carrier in Africa, reported $7 billion in revenue and 17.1 million passengers for the 2023-24 fiscal year. South Africa has received the green light to import yellow maize from Brazil. This after it became evident that a decrease in local production, coupled with increasing maize prices, would create a shortfall in maize in the country. From January to May this year, the price of maize has increased by a staggering 19%. And according to the South African Cereals and Oilseed Trade Association, it costs roughly the same amount to transport maize from inland production areas to Cape Town as it does to bring it in from Brazil. BGTN's business anchor Laurette Morgan has more.
The National Agricultural Marketing Council estimated earlier this year that it might be necessary to import 383,000 tonnes of yellow maize, a crucial ingredient in animal feed, amid shrinking local production and rising prices brought about by lower rainfall in the country's maize-producing regions. While price increases have moderated since the 19% rise between January and May, it is still 275 to 300 rand per tonne cheaper for animal feed manufacturers in the Western Cape, Eastern Cape and possibly also parts of KwaZulu-Natal to import yellow maize rather than to transport it locally from the production areas. Brazilian maize is also likely to price a few dollars cheaper in the coming weeks, which could help curb rising local prices. Ensuring that South Africa can import basic food commodities from the most cost-effective exporting countries is critical for food security in times of shortages. According to the South African Cereals and Oilseeds Trade Association, SACOTA, based on local GMO regulations, the list of cultivars approved in the exporting country must be synchronized with the local lists maintained by the Department of Agriculture. It's a complex process to synchronize these lists due to the complexity of modern GMO maize cultivars. However, on Monday, SACOTA received confirmation from the National Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development that imports of Brazilian maize would now be permitted. Laurette Morgan, BGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Coming up shortly, a look at some sports news from BRICS Plus countries.
Coming soon on BRICS Global Television.
What was your moment in prison when you were like, I don't want to do this anymore?
I was 21 years old when I took my first life in prison. I had 1 star on my shoulder. By the age of 25, I became the first star general of the 28s, meaning that I had 4 stars on both my shoulders. I had taken 8 people's lives.
BRICS Plus sports updates, India's appointed former South African fast bowler Morné Morkel as its new bowling coach, replacing Paras Mamre. Morkel, who has 544 international wickets and was Pakistan's bowling coach until December, will work alongside Gautam Gambhir, the newly appointed head coach and former World Cup winning batter. The pair previously collaborated at the Lucknow Super Giants in the IPL and the Durban Super Giants in the SA20. Morkel, renowned for his success in Test cricket, including being South Africa's leading wicket-taker in the 2015 World Cup, brings extensive experience to the role. India's upcoming fixtures include series against Bangladesh and New Zealand, followed by a tour to Australia. Indian wrestler Vinesh Phogat's appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sport has been rejected after she was disqualified from the women's 50-kilogram final at the Paris Olympics for being, get this, just 100 grams overweight. Phogat, a three-time Commonwealth Games gold medalist, had made weight for earlier matches but exceeded the limit at the final weigh-in. The Wrestling Federation of India sought a reconsideration from United World Wrestling, and Phogat requested CAS to award her a shared silver medal. CAS, however, upheld the UWW's decision, confirming Phogat's disqualification. Sarah Hildebrand of the US won gold, while Cuba's Yosnelis Guzman Lopez, who lost to Phogat in the semi-finals, took silver. Phogat, 29, announced her retirement from wrestling after the disqualification. And South Africa's Dricus du Plessis defends his UFC middleweight title against former champion Israel Adesanya at UFC 305 in Perth this weekend. The reigning champion, known for his aggression and power, faces his toughest test yet against the skilled and charismatic Adesanya. The former champ, hungry for redemption after losing the belt, aims to reclaim his throne. This epic clash will determine the future of the middleweight division and promises to be one of the year's most explosive fights. BGTN sports correspondent Ben Ricozzo has all the details.
Dricus du Plessis, the South African middleweight champion, arrived in Perth, Australia for the UFC 305 to a warm and enthusiastic welcome from the local South African community.
It's crazy, it's amazing.
It's time for the 2024 Rugby Championship, and we have a blockbuster to get us started with the Wallabies hosting the world champions South Africa in Brisbane.
The fight week for Steelmarks feels like home away from home. The Boks humiliated the Wallabies in Brisbane last week by 33 points to 7, which will be more than enough motivation for Dricus ahead of his fight against Israel, the Jujuman Adesanya.
Dricus, Lucanio over here. Hi brother, it's my pimps here. We just want to wish you all the best on your coming fight. Make us proud, boya.
We've got the backing of the entire nation and myself. You make us unbelievably proud, and I'm sure everybody is know that you're going to give it your all.
Dricus, it's Bonke, but I'm here. So I wish you all the best for UFC championship fight, and I know you're going to bring it back home, brother. We got your back.
Woo! And they are driving.
The Boks will play the second leg against the Wallabies in Perth on Saturday, just hours ahead of Dricus Adesanya's UFC 305 main event. The Boks stars, Siya Kolisi and Eben Etzebeth, will walk Dricus to the octagon ahead of the fight against the New Zealander Adesanya in Perth on Sunday.
Playing the winner by TKO, Dricus du Plessis.
The rivalry between Dricus du Plessis and Israel Adesanya has been intensifying ever since du Plessis secured a decisive victory over Robert Whittaker, catapulting him into the top ranks of the UFC middleweight division.
He came in the UFC, I knew who he was a little bit, but I didn't go, oh, who the f is this fake dude coming in? I just said, cool, there's another African in the UFC. That ticked me off a little bit, so that's what started this, but again, I'll finish it.
The friction between the two fighters goes beyond the octagon, as Adesanya, born in Nigeria and representing New Zealand, has made it clear that he wants to prove to du Plessis who the real African champion is.
What's up,
I'm African, but I ain't no brother of yours, son.
Let's go. You my for real. I'll show you.
So what are you saying to everybody in New Zealand? What are you saying?
Joe, I'll tell you one thing. Yo, I don't need a DNA test. I don't need a 36 and me to know where I'm from. I manifested this. I said I was going to have this moment. And I know.
Adesanya's challenge to duplessis is deeply rooted in the pride and identity, as both fighters have African heritage, but their journeys and representations differ. This brewing rivalry adds an extra layer of intensity to their potential showdown, making it one of the most anticipated matchups in the middleweight division.
What does it take to be at the level where you are now?
It takes extreme love for what you do, extreme passion. I remember even locally when I was a champion, a double champion, people would say, listen, Dricus is good, but you can't compete with the guys in the UFC. He's not close to their level. And I win my first UFC fight and they say, okay, well, that was cool, lucky, but if he gets to the top 10, top 15 guys, he won't last. Get my first top 15 win, they say, cool. Anybody in the top 10 will smoke him, get top 10, get top 5, and now I just beat number 1. And it's fun, it's motivating, it's great because every time they say you can't do it and you do it, it makes all the hard work worth it.
Do you listen to the criticism though?
Depending on from who it is. For me, every guy on the street thinks he can fight. Every guy on Facebook thinks he can fight. I promise you they can't fight.
As the tension continues to build, fans are eagerly awaiting the clash, which promises to be not just a fight for the title, but a battle for African pride.
My house, let's go!
Until Dricus arrived.
South Africa is officially on the map now!
I'm the African fighter in the UFC. Myself and Cameron, we breathe the African air. We wake up in Africa every day. We train in Africa, we're African born, we're African raised. We still reside in Africa, we train out of Africa. That's an African champion and that's who I'll be.
That's your BRICS Plus sports updates. Coming up, remember earlier this year, China reached out to the United States in a show of panda diplomacy. Well, there's been a development on that story and it's a good one. Back in just a bit.
Coming soon on BRICS Global Television.
I remember being in the stadium, going into the stadium, and then there were kids outside asking for our autograph and things like that. And they really believed that we were these superhuman characters that were just used the wheelchair to get around, hidden superpowers kind of thing. And the stadium in London was sold out every single day. I mean, for that, it I think was both for the athlete and for people around the world said, this is actually something worth watching. This is something, that's worthwhile. We can take note of it.
And finally, California celebrated the arrival of 2 giant pandas from China this week, marking the first such delivery in 21 years. Yun Chuan and Xin Bao, who traveled nearly 7,000 miles from Sichuan, were welcomed at the San Diego Zoo with traditional Chinese dances and festivities. Despite the fanfare, the pandas appeared indifferent to the celebrations. California Governor Gavin Newsom declared August the 8th Panda Day, emphasizing the symbolic importance of the pandas in fostering international goodwill amid recent US-China tensions. The loan of these pandas, a symbol of panda diplomacy, was solidified during a summit between US President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping. This gesture is part of China's efforts to continue its panda loan program, which had seen previous agreements lapse. The San Diego Zoo, which previously hosted pandas until 2019, looks forward to the return of these iconic animals, enhancing its role in panda conservation and attracting visitors. Well, that's it for this week. We're back again next week with more BRICS Plus news. In the meantime, keep tabs on our website and social media for daily updates.